All right, there we go. We're live. What are you laughing at?
I didn't laugh.
You just had a
I
smile
was
on your face.
smiling. I was trying to cover up me eating cookies.
All right, Theology Thursday number 14. Virtual high five. High five on. We reach over there yet. All right. So this is Theology Thursday number 14, and we're going to be discussing how to resolve conflict within relationships or friendships.
Friendships. Okay, sorry. But I
Watching too much Gary Vee.
Gary Vee, he was like, fire.
This is Theology Thursday number 14. No, stop.
All right,
Let's be serious. So the last couple of weeks we've been talking about friendships, how to build friendships. We talked about friendship circles, and this week we want to focus on how to possibly rekindle friendships or fix friendships that may be broken. Right. So
the ones that deserve to be fixed.
yeah, that's actually a good point. Now, usually a lot of people say the Bible stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth. They say that's the acronym. But what I'm finding is sometimes we have to, because in looking at or looking for examples of broken friendships that actually came back together, I really couldn't find anything that was specific. I mean, we'll talk about Jacob and Esau, but even in that, like they're brothers, so the Bible doesn't necessarily lay things out crystal clear all the time, but there's some hints and some signals that we could actually use and pull from to actually help us, fix some of our broken relationships. So the first scripture I want to look at is found in James chapter 4, and that's verses 1 through, let's say, 3. And it reads as follows. Those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you? You want something and you do not have it, so you commit murder. And you covet something you cannot obtain, so you engage in disputes and conflicts. You do not have because you do not ask. You do not ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly in order to spend what you get on your pleasures. All right, so this particular scripture, it's to me it's kind of a rough one when we look at it, but um, let me do this. I'm gonna take this out of context. So some people take scripture out of context and they don't warn you. I'm gonna take this one out of context and just tell you what I personally think it's about. Like, so in terms of the disputes that come from within you, one of the things I want to focus on is oftentimes they say when you have a problem with other individuals or you have like a beef or a conflict, usually you're mad at them for something that's kind of going on internally. I know you say that. What's the thing that you typically say? Things that you don't like at other people is things that are
Like within you.
Within you.
Yeah.
It's kind for me. It's kind of what
What?
laughing.
What'd you say? Say it again.
As far as what?
Not what you said, what I say, but what you were saying before, that sometimes you have conflict with somebody because of something within you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What happened? Are you taking note of that for a specific reason?
No.
Okay.
Calm down, bro. No. No, I don't know that I agree with that. So I just kind of let that ponder.
Okay. But anything, there's a few things that we could pull from in here that will help us resolve some of our friendship conflict, including outside of there being a war with inside of us. There's also the part where it says we have something that we don't want, so we commit murder. So it's not necessarily that we're really going to kill somebody, but it's more like, well, we may not know how to articulate what we want in the context of our relationship, so we're gonna dead it instead of trying to resolve the issue. So I take that as a metaphor.
Yeah.
What else? And finally, we ask and do not receive because we ask wrong. So like when we're in these situations, some kids over there. So when we're in these situations where there's conflict, we may not necessarily know how to communicate what we're looking for or what we need in terms of the context of the relationship.
Right.
So the question I want to ask is, how do conflicts start? in
okay.
relationships, like how do
Yeah.
they start? Like where do they come from? Just examples.
Differences,
Differences. What else?
Misunderstanding.
attitudes, tones of voices.
Yeah.
Uncommunicated or unspoken expectations.
Or desires. Yep. Wait. So do you establish your friendship with expectations? I've never said, hey, we're gonna be friends, and this is what I expect from our relationship.
Like a friendship contract.
we're a housewives. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a friendship contract. I've never established a
You
friendship.
mean with the other person?
Yeah, never.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't
Yeah,
think
no,
I've done it with the
no,
other
but it
person.
doesn't mean that you don't have certain expectations in your mind that you come with
Yeah.
when you begin a relationship, so that when that person isn't meeting them, you get mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it will work to establish that stuff up front? Like, hey, my name is Terrell. This is what I'm looking for in a friend. I mean, we do it. We kind of do it when we're dating and romantic relationships. So should we do that with non-romantic relationships? Like, hey, this is what I'm looking for in a friend, and if you can't match that, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have we can't hang out. Like, do you guys have criteria for your friendships?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
So what happens if somebody doesn't meet that criteria?
I get mad. I just said that.
No, but I mean before.
Like in the beginning?
In the beginning, yeah. Do you put them in a different box as associate, or do you still try to develop a relationship?
It would depend
Yeah.
on what the thing is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, it definitely depends on what it is.
Do you have a checklist like of things?
Not technical, but yeah.
Okay.
What is it when you're dating? You have your list of what you want.
Your needs and your pros and needs and wants and
what you want in a man, what you want in a woman. You have that list. So
Yeah.
maybe you have something like that with a friend, but you don't create the list because you just. I feel like with friendships, you think that they'll just happen, but then with relationships, you're very purposeful about it. So you want to do things like that, but they'll end up doing the same thing at times.
Yeah. All right. So what I want to do is take a look at, even though this is not a friendship, I want to take a look at Esau and Jacob, who were brothers, and they were twins. And what happens is, in this particular story, is found in Genesis 25, Genesis 27, and Genesis 32. So there's kids running around, so forgive us for that. So what happens is Jacob tries to steal Esau's birthright, not once but twice. So Esau is the older brother, Jacob's the younger brother, and Rebecca is actually more. She sides with Jacob in terms of that being her favorite son, even though they were twins, right? So because Esau is older, he has the birthright. That means he's gonna get blessed. He's gonna get blessed by their father once his father dies, and he's gonna get like all of their inheritance. What happens initially is Esau's out in the field, I believe, doing some work, and he comes back in and he's famished, and he feels like that he needs some food and water, or else he's gonna die. So he tells Jacob, like, listen, hurry up and feed me. he tells Jacob, hurry up and feed me because I feel like I'm gonna die, and if you feed me, what I'll do is I'll give you my birthright. So he agrees to hand over his birthright. Now they don't trade birthright. He doesn't give him his birthright that easily. So like later on in the context of the story, what happens is as their father's getting a little bit older, basically Rebecca and Jacob plot to trick their father into thinking that because their father can't see at a certain point, like he's blind. So they trick the father into handing over the birthright. So he ends up blessing Jacob like tremendously. He gets all these blessings and stuff like that. And it's weird because at a certain point, the father knows that Esau and Jacob, like they're not the same person. He knows, like, wait a minute, he can tell by the voice. So at no point did Esau get blessed because he just kind of handed it over. So Esau is so upset at this whole situation. He was like, when I see you, it's on, basically, I'm gonna kill you. So the story is interesting because they go their separate ways. And later on in the story, as it picks up, later on in Genesis, what happens is they meet up again, and that all of a sudden, like Esau just kind of forgives Jacob out of nowhere. So there's like reconciliation that happens, but there's no explanation for the reconciliation. So Jacob is shook. He's scared to death. He's wrestling with God before they meet. He sends his servants first, and then they meet, and Esau embraces him and is happy to see him. But we have no clue why Esau forgave Jacob. No reason. And then what happens is they go their separate ways, and then they come back again together when their father is buried, or when their father dies. So for me, what I had to do is look outside of some of what's going on in that particular instance, because I couldn't find anything that led us to a reason why there's forgiveness. So in order to resolve conflict, what I did, I looked in different places. The first place I looked is in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where it says, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way, and it is not irritable or resentful, and it does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. And then also in Galatians chapter 5, what I decided to do is pull in these verses, Galatians 5:22 through 23, and it's the fruit of the Spirit. It says, by contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, and there's no law against such things. So here, although we have Jacob and Esau, we see their beef, and we don't see any reason for reconciliation. There's things we can look at in Scripture that let us know how we should act as it relates to all of our relationships. So that deals with this pure definition for love, and then it also deals with the fruit of the Spirit, which we all are, which is all instilled in us if we decide to tap into it. Make sense? I know we're distracted. Hopefully these kids over here will be quiet
It's
now.
so funny because the first 10 minutes before we started, it was healing.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we started, it was
Yeah. That's what happens when you do stuff live in Wegmans. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully maybe we'll do a children's ministry or something. Hey, children, come sit down.
right. And looking at how they share the toys, how they resolve the conflict of splitting the toys.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point. We'll see.
So Tara says the kids are so loud she can't really.
Let's see. Actually, wait, let's see.
Yeah.
Do we want to move?
No, we do want to move.
Okay. All right, so yeah,
Let's walk.
this is gonna be interesting. Okay, this is what I'll do. I'll do this. Hold on one second. Here, hold this.
You're going to walk with us.
Yeah, you gotta walk with us. Talk about improvising. Oops, sorry. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. They are way too loud. Okay. Sorry for that. Those kids were way too loud. All right, so recap where we were at. We were talking about friendships and how to resolve conflict. We talked about the story of Esau and Jacob and how Jacob actually got Esau's birthright, and that story doesn't necessarily show us any reconciliation, but we could actually use Scripture to figure out some of the characteristics we should have and the qualities we should have actually going into relationships. And what I'll do is I'll review that again, just because we said it was extremely loud. So what I'll do is, so in terms of the reason or how we want to go about resolving conflicts, is we want to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. where it talks about love. So if we know the definition of love, this will actually help us in terms of how we think about relationships and think about how we can potentially resolve conflicts. And so it says love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist in its own way. It's not irritable or resentful, and it does not rejoice in wrongdoings, but rejoices in truth. And then we also want to look at Galatians 5, where it says, by contrast, this talks about the fruit of patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. All right. So that's the recap. That's the recap. What I want to talk about now is how we actually try to put some of this stuff into context, because it's easy to say that love and patience and all that stuff, we can have that going into these disputes, but when there's emotional stuff involved, it's kind of tough to actually separate or remember some of these scriptures just because we're angry and we want our way, and either that or we're hurt. And one of the things I want to point out is there's an escalation of conflict. I got this from some of my conflict resolution notes. And what they say happens in conflict, like when you have, issues with other people, they say specific issues end up becoming very generalized. So what we do, and I do this too in arguments all the time, I'll tell you this. Like I generalize stuff. I say, well, you do this, and I make it seem like this person does this all the time. So it's like this wide brush that I'm painting the picture with, instead of saying specific with what's happening right now and with how I'm actually feeling right now. I may be like, well, you never wash the floor or something crazy like that ever. When of course she washes the floor, she just may have not washed the floor today. So
that's a true story. Is it? A true story. I don't like floors.
But you didn't have to put yourself
That's okay.
out there.
I'm okay. I don't like floors. I don't like doing floors.
Okay. So there's that generalization. You begin to see a decrease in self-examination and an increase in competitive self-improvement. So what happens is we then start to point the finger, right? So as tensions rise, we say, this person is doing this person is doing that. So we even if there may be some wrongdoing or maybe a lack of communication on our end, we don't see any of that because the tension is starting to raise a little bit. Number 5, or number 3, I'm sorry. The number of parties and allies starts to grow. So what we do is we sometimes we try to, what they call in psychology is we try to triangle people in, and I'm trying to think about. No, I'm not gonna tell those stories, but I have some personal stories. Sometimes you have to. I kind of double dutch them whether I'm gonna tell them or not. Like now, I'm like, no, don't tell them. But typically, what happens is we try to get people in on our side. So sometimes we don't purposely do it. So we may say, hey, blah 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 blah. Brooke doesn't wash floors. What do you think about that? So we then start to try to get people on our side, especially in friendships. Maybe not in marriages or romantic relationships, but in friendships, especially if the other party knows the other individual, what we'll do is dump on this individual. This way, in that triangle, basically, you could have 2 points of the triangle putting pressure on that one person to change and to kind of bend and to make them feel like they're actually, in the wrong, even if they may not be. So what you want to do is don't triangle people in. We'll get into some of the other solutions, but I want to make that clear. Some of the worst things you could do is bring other people into your conflict, especially if they're not professionals. Actually,
and that happens a lot in families too.
Yeah.
Big on triangulation.
Yeah, I see. We studied a lot of that in our family counseling class too.
I studied that in my own family.
Shots fired.
No, I'm just kidding. And I've done it. So yeah. Yeah, and it is. I agree. It makes it tough because it doesn't. When you triangle somebody in, you think it's gonna help you to resolve it, and it doesn't. It
Yeah,
always makes it worse.
definitely. And finally, then you see an increase in dehumanization. So then that's when you start taking personal jabs, name calling, um, and things like that. So how do you actually resolve the conflict? So we've laid the foundation. We
The kids,
bye.
the kids.
We laid the foundation of how beef looks. We laid the foundation of how it escalates, and then we also laid the foundation of some of the characteristics and qualities we should have. So oftentimes, well, especially when we look at scripture, and especially as leaders, we may give a sermon and give a message and say, "Hey, just read scripture." And I don't think it's in this instance for me, it's just not practical. So I had to look outside of scripture, look at relationship books and do some research to figure out we need how exactly we can come to a resolution or fix some of these relationships that may be broken. And I actually, best research is right here because Brooke actually wrote an article. So we'll read some points from her article on the from the openbox.com. Right. So first point, in order to resolve conflict in your relationships, is like I said, keep others out unless they're professional. I don't want to over spiritualize it, but I don't want to under spiritualize this point as well. But pray. This is Theology Thursdays with Open Box, a spiritual organization. So I want to say pray about the relationship, pray for resolution, pray that God will guide your tongue because some of our tongues are extremely sharp. It can cut like a sword. What else do you want to pray for as it relates to resolving issues or conflicts? Anything else?
Well, I would pray more so keep the prayer about you and the situation because when you do things like God, please change this person.
God, fix them.
Fix them. I mean, we all have our role in relationships,
Yeah.
so it's important for us to own what we can change and accept what we can. And so, even in prayer, a lot of times people say prayer changes things, or they'll say prayer changes people and people change things. However way you want to look at it, it's still about us. So keep the focus there.
All right. Anything else you want to add? Nope. All right. So I'm gonna point out every point that you made in your article because I want to highlight your excellent work. So this is a point. This is a point. This is a point from Brooke. think about what you're really upset about. Get to the heart of it, and
not the surfacey stuff.
Not the surfacey stuff.
Yeah, and so that really means that if you're mad, like a lot of times we'll look at things like, oh, they did this or they said that and that made me mad. But what is it about it that made you mad, or what is it about the situation that hurt you? Because a lot of times we'll stay on anger, and anger is a fine emotion, but a lot of times it's easy. It is. And a lot of times
more emotions than anger and happiness. Remember, I just had two.
But a lot of times you have anger, and underneath that is really hurt. And a lot of times people don't deal with the hurt; they stay with the anger. And so it's easy to stay with the anger, to react out of anger, as opposed to opening your heart to say what's really going on, what really hurt you. And so when you're able to do that, you can really get at what the issue is. And for someone else, the person who you have the issue with, they can understand it better, as opposed to if you're just mad at them. For some people, if you're mad at them, they'll just, okay, but if they can understand more so what's really going on, they might take a different approach in trying to help resolve that.
Mm-hmm. Next point by Brooke is to think about how to clearly get that across. Write it down first if you have to.
Yeah, because a lot of times when we're communicating with people about like what we're angry about or what has hurt us, a lot of times we're lashing out, we're screaming, we're you, and we're not really being clear on what's the real issue. We're not communicating in a way that not only expresses what it is that we're feeling, but we're also not communicating in a way that the other person will receive it. Because I know for me, one of my triggers is people yelling at me. So if you yell at me, there are times when I can still kind of get into like a resolution mode, but a lot of times when you yell at me, I get defensive.
I know firsthand. unfortunately.
Very quickly. I get very defensive because it's a trigger for me. So you have to be really mindful of how it is that you're talking about what the conflict is, what has upset you, what has hurt you.
Are you a yeller?
I'm the yeller.
He's a yeller.
You don't.
She's the tone person.
I can get base.
It's not even it's
Tone, okay, he calls it a nastiness that I can get.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a big yeller. So I go from this voice or I'm screaming, which is not the same as yelling. I mean, it's yelling, but it's like, that. And I don't like that. So,
No, it's that.
and then I get the sarcasm and that I can talk it, I get that mode. And so for him, that can be a trigger. For somebody else, it can be a trigger. But yeah, and then I also encourage writing it down because sometimes all this stuff is going on in our head because we're so upset. But if we can think it out and say it out loud, or if we can write it down, we can get a little more clear on what's really going on so that we can then communicate that to somebody else.
Next point, and this is added in from research, we want to be the ones that make the first move. So oftentimes when there's a separation in our relationships and there's some hurt there, we may be waiting for the other person to make the move. But in this context, I want to encourage you to be the first one to act. So after you have your thoughts written down on paper, after you understand what you're trying to communicate or get across, you have to be the first one to act. So if you're going to do all this work up front, you can't just sit on it and say, well, when this person calls me, or when they email me, or when they Facebook me, or something like that, or when they
call me up to apologize.
Yeah, exactly. then I'll so then we'll talk about all this work I did. Now you want to be the first one to make the move. What else? Where was I at? First thing you want to do is begin with your mistakes. I think we tend when we get in conflicts, we tend to just kind of dive in head first and kind of point the finger. But I think if we actually take the time to reflect and start the conversation with, here's some of the things I've done wrong, or here's some of my mistakes, I think that could make the situation a little bit less tense. It could loosen up the other person that may be able to you may be able to open up things for discussion a little bit further.
But then if you feel like you haven't made any mistakes, then you just start with your feelings as opposed to, you did this to me. Like, start with your feelings, because there could be something that happened where you didn't actually do anything wrong. You were just wrong. So there might not be any mistakes that you come up with, but still not saying you did, as opposed to I feel, whatever. That can be a better position to start the conversation.
Another point is be sure your mistakes and disappointments are expressed in an honest and kind manner.
Yeah. Because again, people don't receive stuff well. I mean, that when stuff happens to you, you might not receive it well. So when you're trying to talk to a person, because people tend to get defensive, or because they shut down or have these different ways that they handle conflict. A lot of people are not comfortable with conflict. I don't like it. I don't like it. People aren't comfortable, so you have to find ways. And it's not necessarily for them, but it's to get to a resolution so that you can be more at peace.
Yeah.
So just finding ways to be upfront and be honest about what's going on so that you don't have any residual issues or feelings after the conversation.
And then, let's see, what was the next one? Talk about it. This is another point. Talk about it when it's somewhat fresh. Not so long after that, the other person will be disconnected from it. So when you have an issue with somebody, if this person doesn't know that you have an issue with them, what could tend to happen is, especially if they don't think they did anything wrong, like if you wait years to kind of address this issue, they may look at you like you're crazy and like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So, and then at that point, I know for me, if somebody kind of approached me with like, well, 5 years ago you said this, either I'll just brush it off and won't pay attention to your feelings at all if I don't remember it, or I'll get defensive. Well, no, let me say, as pastor, what I would do is first hear you, and then I would be back your word. No, I'm gonna be honest. Like, depending on what it was, I might be like, oh, okay, sorry, and then just keep it moving.
But why is that? Because you've dealt with it and gotten over it, or is it?
I might not know what the heck they talking about, to be honest.
Yeah,
but what if you do? Like, what if you recall what tore your relationship with that person apart, and you dealt with it in your own way, and you're over it, but this person is now coming back to reconcile.
Mm.
Do you have the conversation? Do you, because you're over it,
Yeah.
you know? So what do you do for the other person, if anything?
I think
Pastor Terrell.
I think at that point, I mean, you have to have the conversation, but it makes
No,
it.
you don't.
Well, for me.
Oh, okay.
At that point, I think I have to have the conversation,
No, Pastor Brooke thinks.
but I think it makes it more difficult to address, especially if there's like 5 years between it, because at that point the story gets twisted. Um, items or ideas or facts about what actually happened may have changed. So I think it's better to kind of just address some of the stuff head on. So what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was gonna say. I mean, you don't have to, but it would be nice if you did. But however, personal story. My friend and I, we actually stopped being friends for 5 years, and we're now friends again. But we had a somewhat of a falling out, but not like one of those big falling out. It was a situation where there was a lack of communication, particularly around hurt feelings and things like that. And so it caused the relationship to deteriorate very quickly. And it was a long-term relationship. And so it was a 5-year hiatus. And I actually called, I didn't call her up, I Facebooked her.
Yeah.
And, said, hey, let's meet and talk. And my intention was not to reconcile. It was just to kind of resolve it for myself if I could, because I wasn't really over it.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually ended up reconciling. But that wasn't the intention. So I do think that for her, it was nice for her to say, yeah, we can talk about it. Because I think in that way, there might be things that you don't know that the other person experienced, or saw you in a certain way or whatever. So I
All right, we're back. This has been an eventful Theology Thursday. So where was I? I was talking about hearing the other person's perspective. So what you want to do is accept their critiques and just kind of let your defense down, because oftentimes when we get emotional, we just want to be heard from our particular standpoint. And if you hear somebody else's perspective, that'll give you both the opportunity to see what was wrong, see where you could fix some things, and really determine whether or not you guys could go come back together or go separate ways. The next thing you want to do in the context of trying to resolve or help resolve some of the issues in your friendship is you want to fix the problem and don't blame. This one we talked about this one in the car. This one gets kind of tough, especially if somebody else was actually dead wrong. But I think what they're trying to say, this particular point is you don't want to say, hey, you did X, Y, and Z, you did X, Y, and Z. You really just want to focus on the issue. So if the issue was, what's a good example? The issue was, I don't know about that. You know what? I really don't know about this one. I may have to scratch this one off, because at a certain point, if somebody's wrong, they're really just going to have to accept the blame. I think what they were trying to say when I got this particular point is that you kind of want to soften the blow a little bit, but I'm sorry, like you said, no.
Don't sugarcoat.
Don't sugarcoat.
I statements. Maybe use I statements.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel this way, but at a
But
certain
you gotta be
point,
careful with the I statement, because you don't want to say, well, I feel that you suck. Like,
But you can do I feel this way because.
Right. Absolutely. But I think with that point, it's about, even though I think it depends. I don't think it's a fully generalized point, but I think it's more about not focusing on, you know what, you were insensitive, you were rude, you were this, you were that, I think the point is to move away from that and just to focus on the issue. Well, what did they do?
The issue was, I felt hurt, or the issue is I feel disrespected. The issue is, so not necessarily pointing the finger, but just taking the issue as a whole and saying, this is how I feel. Let's address that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think that is.
So that one was a little bit tough, but I think could address the issue and not necessarily point the finger.
Right.
And
And then at the same time, if you're going to point the finger at the person so badly, then is it worth having a conversation? Because if you feel like they suck that bad, then just end it. You know what I mean? Like, well, what's the conversation for? Just to tell them how crappy they are? And if you're only going to do that, then what's the point? So you're not going to actually resolve any sort of conflict or hurt by doing that. So that's why I think it's important to kind of focus on the actual, like, the issue, the hurt feelings, whatever it is, as opposed to you're a horrible person.
I think this next point actually kind of it ties in very well to that particular point. Is you want to express the emotion that came up during the conflict, and if there's an unmet need, you want to figure out if this relationship can meet that need. So, if the like I said, if the emotion was disrespect, if the emotion was disloyalty, what other emotions come up in conflicts? Mistrust, or just plain hurt and sadness from something somebody said. You want to express that emotion and kind of put that emotion on the table, because I think when we get emotional, when we get hurt, we don't necessarily, at least for me, I'm speaking from personal perspective, all the time I'm getting to a point where I can say this is the emotion I was feeling, but it becomes tough at times because we're in the middle of our emotion, so we don't necessarily have the time or the energy to kind of take a step back and look and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Instead, we get on the defensive, or we attack, or we try to fight for what we need, as opposed to say, you know what, I'm really hurt, like you hurt my feelings. And then finally, last point is, if things get too crazy, get a mediator. Somebody is professional. Now, I can't tell you this story. All right, so when I say somebody's professional, you don't want to, this mediator has to be invited in by both parties. I had a situation with somebody where I was trying to address the conflict with another individual. They brought somebody in. I can laugh at it now because it's funny. They brought somebody in to mediate, quote unquote, and the mediator took sides. So when I didn't like what the mediator had to say, because I could see the mediator was taking sides, I rolled my eyes at the person. That person wasn't having it, and the person actually got in my face for rolling my eyes. So you want to be sure you have the right mediator. That's all I'll say about that. Anything else that we missed out on?
I now know the story you're talking about.
I mean, yeah. So you just want to be sure that the mediator is not like, hey, let me pull this person in because I just want them to hear what's going on. But this person actually have professional experience, like an actual mediator, somebody that is trained professional, especially if you value this relationship, or you really have a heart for this person and you really want to resolve things.
I mean, and if you can't find that, sometimes having just a person who you consider to be wise and like a mentor, or an older person you respect, or I mean, they don't have to be older, but somebody like that can be helpful too. But it's just very important for them to be unbiased.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, unbiased.
Unbiased. Yep. Any thoughts, Joe? I've been looking at you, and you just seem like you have so much to say about this time. Before we get into your thoughts, let's be real about this. It seems good and dandy on paper, because on paper it's like, oh yeah, we checked the box, hit all these steps, boom, and then our friendship is gonna be back to normal. But this stuff, dealing with emotions, is hard. Yeah. And that's why I say, with the story of Esau and Jacob is crazy, because this guy stole your birthright, your father blessed him, you didn't get no blessings, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, my brother, like, what happened? Like, somebody tell me, like, whoever wrote that particular section of Genesis.
It was 5 years later.
But even still, I mean, it was some time later, but even still, like, the writer of Genesis left out a good chunk of information, because I think if we would have known, like, oh, this is what happened, God spoke to Esau and said, forgive. But none of that. We don't get any of that. It's just like, oh. And me personally, I can't just be like, 5 years later, oh, boy, what's up?
Yeah, I think that's definitely tougher to do because it depends on like what happened and you as a person. Some people can wait 5 years and they still just as pissed off as you as they were 5 years previously. So it really just depends on you, I think, or each person individually.
Yep. Final thoughts? No?
I mean, I think the steps are very helpful, but in practice, it takes thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because in conflict, it's not easy to remember what you should do when all you can think about is how you feel or what you need or what you don't need or what you ain't gonna take, all of that. So.
Yeah, so when I post this on the actual website, theopenbox.com, what I'll do is I'll list out all the points. So this way, and I'll also do it in a YouTube video too. I'll list out the points so you could actually have a list that you could go to. This way you don't have to, watch this entire episode that end up turning into youth church in the beginning.
But I mean, I think some of it, it's normal though. It's normal for it to not be easy because we're dealing with people in relationships. I tell you, relationships, it's like, that is like the greatest lesson of our lives. It's going to be tied to relationships, hands down. And so even in like with me learning what I learned and how my friend and I, hey Tamika, how we rekindled our relationship, it took 5 years. Like it took me 5 years to be like, let me reach out to her. That's a long time.
And then she had to be ready to receive it.
She had to be ready to receive it because when I had reached out before, not to have a conversation, but just to say, hey, she was not receptive. And then for some reason I tried again. But it's not like that for everybody. Everybody is different and we all have to learn and grow over time to get to these points. And we keep growing and we keep learning. But it takes a lot of just trial and error.
Yep. Final point is, remember like in the story, Esau and Jacob, they came, they were happy, and then they went their separate ways. So when you have this level of reconciliation, that doesn't mean your relationship is going to be the same or mirror what it was. Sometimes it can get better. Sometimes you guys can just have peace and then not necessarily interact with each other. So just keep that in mind that when you're searching for reconciliation, it's not necessarily that the relationship will mirror the one in the past. It's just about both parties actually having peace and being able to move on and respect each other, not harbor any negative emotions.
Which in some ways isn't reconciling. It's just forgiving. Forgiving and moving on. I think a lot of times people always connect forgiveness and reconciliation, but they're different. One is I forgive you, the other is I forgive you, and now let's get back together in relationship. For some relationships, you're not going to do that, and that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that is it. An eventful Theology Thursday number 14. We started off with youth church in the beginning. We were able to mobilize and move to a quiet area, and then we lost signal, and then we got signal. So definitely interesting. So if there's anybody out there who specializes in video, please join the team. You can go to theopenbox.com/join us. What else is going on? We'll probably continue this discussion on relationships next week. I have a marathon coming up on Sunday, so pray for me because I'm not necessarily sure how that's going to go. And then, we're fully funded for our drive, which was to provide 150 toiletry bags to the homeless in DC. So we're excited about that. If you want to continue to donate, please do so. We'll be going out on September 27th to actually pass the bags out. So we're super excited for that. Thank you for everyone who donated and who participated in that. And that's it. That's all I got. So I am at Mr. Terrell Harris. This is at Land of Brook. This is at Loco_Joko on Twitter. Peace and blessings. You guys have a great evening.